today I'm going to show you a very simple way to grow and take care of eggplant. One of the keys to eggplant is having aged, really rich compost. They're heavy feeders and they really thrive with compost. And if you happen to have chickens like I do, you can also use their manure as compost. It works really well for that. Oh, and by the way, I've moved the 2 babies outside for the first time. The other ones, my friend came and picked up hers, so that's why I only have 2 now. She took hers home. But I moved them outside for the first time. They're doing pretty well. In the next couple days, I'm gonna move them in closer with these guys in that little contraption right there so they can be closer to each other. But that'll be a whole other video. Stay tuned for that if you have chickens, because I'll teach you how to integrate new chicks with your existing flock without any fighting. But for now, we're going to focus on the eggplant. We're going to take them up to the big garden and put them there. If you've seen my other videos, you probably saw that I put down a big sheet of silo cover, which is basically just like a big roll of black plastic. And that serves to keep the weed controlled, because obviously if there's the plastic down, the weeds can't pop up and grow, so it's going to save me a lot of time and I won't have to spray, which is really nice. And the black plastic also helps warm up the ground quicker, which is great because if you're directly planting seeds in here, the warmth will help them germinate faster, and it'll also help the plants that are in here grow a little bit faster and protect them a little bit more when we still have those cool evenings. Because springtime weather can be very unpredictable. Like this, for example, my broccoli, little bit of hail damage, not that bad. The peppers got it a little bit worse, but they should grow out of it. They should be okay. But eggplant really like it warm, so they'll like the black plastic up here, and now that we're finally out of the danger of frost, we're safe to plant them. There's lots of different kinds of eggplant. The Black Beauty is one of the most famous ones. That's like your standard eggplant that's large. And I'll show you the picture on the tag. Looks like just the basic eggplant that you see everywhere. And then I also got this one, which is, I call it like the slicing eggplant. It's long and skinny. They taste pretty much the same. And you can also get striped eggplant and white eggplant. I have not been able to find those yet this year, but I'm going to try to. In my experience, the striped eggplant, although it's really pretty, it doesn't get quite as big as a lot of the other varieties, but it still tastes good. And like I said, it's really pretty. It's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping to find that. Eggplant are in the nightshade family, so their leaves are actually toxic. So make sure your pets don't get near that. And it was weird because the other day, this is actually my second batch of eggplant plants. I had my original ones in a tray, and I was just waiting to plant them because I was busy planting a bunch of other stuff before I got to those. And then I was finally ready to plant them. I went over and they were chewed down to just like a little stalk. And I'm not sure what would have done that. There are lots of bugs that really like to eat the leaves, so be mindful of that. But this early in the season, I really don't have any pest issues. And the way it was chewed on, it looked like it was like a rabbit or a chipmunk or something. But they shouldn't be eating this because it's toxic. So I don't know for sure what animal did it. I don't know what ended up happening to that animal, but just keep in mind that the leaves are toxic. And I don't know if you can see it too well on here because the plant is so young. I'll try to get a better shot of it. Hold on. Right there, they actually have little thorns on them that get bigger as the plant grows. So you might want to wear gloves when you handle them. When they're this small, it doesn't really hurt. If you get pricked, you can see them better there. But when you're going to pick your eggplants, it's really helpful to wear gloves because sometimes it can get you. Okay, so I went ahead with my scissors and I cut the holes. And that's where I'm going to plant them. Before I put all this plastic down up here, I did go through and spread some compost. And I also put down a 10-20-20 fertilizer up here. And for the fertilizer, the first number on the bag stands for nitrogen. The second stands for phosphorus, and the last one is potassium. Nitrogen helps things grow, and you don't want too much nitrogen with these or it'll just focus on growing a really tall plant, but it won't focus so much on producing the actual fruit that you're going to eat. So the phosphorus, which is the second macronutrient in the fertilizer, helps with root development, which is essential for any plant. And then the last one, potassium, is for basically all around health and strength of the plant. I always like to mention this to people. Plants are living things just like us. They need to eat. You're going to get your best results if you're feeding them properly. All right, I'm trying to film and do this at the same time, so just bear with me. So I'm just going to break off some of the loose soil. Loosen the roots a little bit because it's slightly root bound from being in that cup. Oh, and these all came from a local nursery, by the way. I like to keep everything local. All right, so now I have that in there. The next thing I'm going to do is add the compost. that around there. Oh, and see this leaf, how it's yellow? This is probably from it being in this little cup for so long at the nursery, because the plant soaked up all the nutrients in here, and when you see this, it could either be a watering issue or a lack of nutrients, which in this case, I'm sure it was the lack of nutrients. And if it's one of the little bottom leaves, you really don't need it. Just pinch it off, it'll be fine. That way it's not wasting energy putting growth and nutrients into that dead leaf. And actually, I still have to go through and do this, but if you grow peppers, all these little ones at the bottom, if you want to go ahead and pinch them off in the very early stages, like the same day you plant them, you 100% can do that, and it'll actually benefit your plant because they don't need these little leaves. These really don't serve any purpose. So if you get rid of those, it won't have quite as many leaves to try to put energy into when it's growing, and it'll focus more on growing your plant and having it mature so that way it'll start to produce fruit faster for you. And sometimes you'll see something like this where a plant's already blossoming when they're this small, and people might think that that means you have a jump on the competition and you'll be like, oh, this one's going to produce for me faster. Yes and no. If they're already starting to show signs of maturity but they're this small, it might produce a pepper, but it's going to be really tiny, not big enough for you to eat and enjoy, and it's going to put so much energy into that tiny little worthless pepper that the plant is going to take longer to grow to full size. And you want it to obviously grow to full size so it can produce regular sized peppers and a lot of them. So when I see that, and this same rule applies for the eggplant as well and for tomato plants. So if any of these plants you see the blossom on them at a very young, early, small stage like this, pull them off. Sometimes this happens because if they were in the cup in the nursery too long before they got planted into the ground, since they're stressed in there, they might try to mature faster and get their life cycle over with. So it's kind of like a desperate attempt to carry on its genetics, I guess, by bearing fruit. But once you have it in the ground, just go ahead and slow that down a little bit so it can focus on actually growing before it needs to put energy into producing fruit. So that was just a little tip for today. And like I said, that also applies to eggplant. I don't see signs of early maturity on any of these yet, so I don't have to do those to these particular plants, but I wanted to show you that with the pepper. All right, so now we're gonna put more soil back on. And I like to keep these in the ground with it just to help me identify what it is. Obviously, I can tell what it is by looking at the plant, but since I'm going to do some different varieties of eggplant, this is helpful. And now I'm going to add some Epsom salt. Epsom salt is a great source of magnesium, and eggplants, tomatoes, peppers all really thrive with magnesium. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and just sprinkle a little bit around the base of the plant, right near the bottom, so that way when I water it or when it rains, it'll soak directly down to the roots. This will also help, see how they're not, well, I mean, this isn't a great example, but see how some of the leaves aren't as green as they should be from the stress of being in this little cup? This magnesium will help green them up too. And if you wanted to, you could mix 1 to 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt into a gallon of water and then just water your plants with that mix if you wanted to do it that way instead. So it's really hard to film and plant at the same time, so I showed you that example, pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and plant the rest of these, and then I'll show you guys how it looks when we're done. All right, all the eggplant are in the ground now. So you want to keep these evenly watered, especially when they're getting close to start producing their fruit, because if your plant dries out too much, the eggplant, when you harvest them, they're going to be really bitter, they're not going to taste that good, and they won't be that big either. They'll be kind of dried out and just not that tasty. So make sure they get enough water. You don't want to completely drench them, but just as long as the soil is nice and evenly moist, you'll be good. Like I said earlier, a lot of different bugs really like eating these greens, which actually this was perfect timing. I just brought these home today from the nursery and they already have little aphids and little mites on them, so we're gonna have to take care of that because they will eat this thing. Looking under the leaves is the best way to find a lot of these pests. Luckily, it's a really easy fix. You can just spray it with 7 garden spray, or you could use BT spray if you wanted to use something organic. And you just spray the top of the leaves and the bottom. And it's not bad to do it just like as a precaution as well. Even if you don't see something, you'll know that they're going to be coming. So just spray it even if you don't see it, top and bottom, and you should be fine. If you start to see a lot of holes in them, then you know you definitely need to treat. Flea beetles really like these, aphids, mites, armyworms, all kinds of things. And then as the plant grows, it's not a bad idea to stake it up with something, or what I do is I'll get a small tomato cage and I'll put that around it to help support it, because it can get pretty top heavy with the leaves as it grows and with the eggplant, since the eggplant can get heavy too. So give it something for support. And they get a really pretty purple blossom before they start to produce fruit. So be on the lookout for that, then you know you're gonna start getting close. So I hope that was easy and simple and to the point for you, so you guys can grow some eggplant too. They're really healthy for you. They're really delicious, especially if they're fresh. The fresh ones taste so much better than what you find in the store. So if you don't like eggplant, try growing your own and you'll probably change your opinion on that. And make sure you subscribe so that way you can follow the journey with this, see how they do, learn more tips as the season goes on, and check out the other gardening videos as well.